Here is an example from last week's class by Holly.
Okay, hello. This is our 5th class on our Friday morning acrylics class. And this time we're doing portraiture, which is really kind of different. And I think it scared some people away because we have fewer people in the class today. But anyway, and the reason it's scary is because it requires drawing. And I'm actually next semester doing a drawing class. So if you are interested in picking up drawing skills, I'm going to have it in the afternoon after my acrylics class. It'll start at 1 and go to 3. And so we'll go through what I use for my drawing classes, and I kind of make changes in it, but it is Betty Edwards, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. And you know what I love about her is she talks about how artists see things differently and what it is that we do that we can see things differently. And I'll tell you that when I was in college, we had to spend 2 whole years drawing before they would ever let us in a painting class. And so that's how important having those drawing skills in the background is. It's really important. You're handicapped in going into art and just painting. If you don't have the drawing skills, you have a problem. So anyway, what I'm using right now is, you know, when we do portraitures, we all look different. Every one of us looks different. But underneath that outside is a surface that is all the same. And you can see that because if you ever look at a skull, every skull is the same. You know, so that basic inside is all the same. What makes the difference is the way the muscles are attached to the skull that makes the difference. But you got to start off with the basics of what the form looks like. And I've got behind me on the board, this is how you're going to start this. You're going to start with drawing an oval because that skull is always an oval shape. And so you do that on your paper or on your canvas, and you take, you know, maybe about 2/3 of the space. Make sure there's space at the top and space at the bottom. So that would be the oval that you draw on this. And I can show you this one. That's about the size that it would fit on the canvas, about this size. And then what you do is you draw that with a pencil on your canvas. And then draw a line right down the center. That's supposed to be a straight line. But it's not so straight. Just think of it as straight. Okay, and then do an axis halfway down, okay? And this is the biggest problem people have with doing portraits. We think our eyes are way up here. And people put the eyes way up there. No, they're halfway down your skull. That's the eye line right there. So you got to do this axis on this. And then on the eye line, you're going to have halfway between each one is the center of the eye, each side, halfway through. And then eyes are sort of oval, so you draw an oval. And in between this oval, there should be an equal size oval in the middle. So that's how far a space they are away from each other. And then for the nose, you go halfway down this half. So that's halfway, sort of. And you just worry about drawing the bottom of the nose, which is kind of like that. Okay, don't draw in here. That is shaded when you do the coloring, but it's not drawn on. And then halfway between the nose and the chin is the lip line, and that is kind of a bird or a bow, and then there's a line at the bottom. Okay, so that's the proportion. The ear goes from a little above the eye down to the mouth. And then for the neck, you go right at the bottom of the ear, straight down and out. And that's the proportion that you want. So that first step is to draw that. The second step we're going to go into then is drawing in the details, and then you go to your picture that you're looking at, and that's where you're going to see some differences. So the eyes are going to look a little different, the mouth's going to look a little different, so you can use it. But just as a general rule, the eye is a little, it's like that. You have a little bump on one side and down, and then there's a line above it. And then the eye itself, you don't see the whole eye, and that's another problem that people have is they try to draw the whole center of the eye. It's covered up, so it goes like that. And then so that is kind of an eye form. The form that an eye generally takes, and that can vary a little bit. The mouth is, like I said, it's a bow at the top. It has this bow down here, and then has a lip under here. Now, you can draw this line, but really it's going to be shaded when you do the actual painting on it. I don't recommend, one of my pictures that I was working from, she's really smiling. Big. This is really hard to do teeth. I would recommend changing that to a non-smile, just a smile with closed mouth, because when you draw the teeth in, they tend to kind of pop out. You have to really subdue them. There's a way of doing it. You can subdue them a little bit, but I kind of changed on my drawing that I did of her, I changed it to a non-smiling because that's too dicey to do. It's difficult. So anyway, so start with your drawing. When you get your drawing all done on, and do this all with pencil, then the next step is we're going to go to a Grisaille. It's called Grisaille, and that is a painting executed entirely in shades of gray or another neutral. It could be the burnt sienna that we have, so it's kind of a brownish color. And then this is from Renaissance times. Artists have done this as an underpainting. So you put it all in shades of gray, so you get in this painting the places that are dark and the places that are light and the lightest, and so you get that all in shades of gray, and then you go over it with a glaze of color. So this was all done in shades of burnt sienna. And then I went over it and just added glazes of color on the top. You can leave, sometimes I leave grisailles just looking like a grisaille in shades of gray. And that could be done, but if you want color, you layer it over the top. And so that's the next step. I expect this particular part of the project to take probably this whole class time. You won't get much further than the face. But my idea is to do the face and then add flowers around it of some sort. And then I use gold. I use gold leaf on the outside to try it, but gold leaf is really, really hard to work with. And so I also have some gold foil that I can give you, or you can buy it on Amazon. It's the gold that they use to put candy in. You can buy like sheets of it on Amazon. Just get whole sheets of it. Or you can use gold paint. I tried gold paint on this and it wasn't strong enough. So that's why I went to using this, which is not easy. I don't recommend the gold leaf necessarily just because it's really difficult to work with. It kind of falls apart while you're using it. Yeah, it's difficult. But if you want to, it's really a nice gold color. So any questions on this? We know where we're going on this?
So if we're doing like a male and you said something about putting pets in there instead of flowers, or is that right?
Yeah, you can do that. Putting what in?
Like animals or something instead of flowers, or?
Well, no, I said some people were making an animal, and that's fine, instead of a human, which this doesn't apply then, what I just said.
Oh.
If you're doing an animal, they were doing just a dog or a cat. I think you're doing a cat. And that's fine, but it's not the same structure. The eyes and everything are in different places. But you just have to look at your picture for that. But no, what I said around the top, when I'm doing one of my grandson. And he's kind of Hawaiian looking. He isn't Hawaiian, he's actually East Indian, South American Indian, Hispanic, and I guess that's it on that side. He takes after that side of the family. But I found some pictures of Hawaiian flowers. Where is that? Oh, I don't think I have it. I had pictures of Hawaiian flowers that I was going to put with him. I'll find it sometime. Oh, I know, I have it over here. Like this. So that would be more of a male kind of looking thing with all the spiky flowers and things. So he's going to get that. So anyway, any other questions? Okay, we'll get started and I'll walk around and help you out with your drawing skills. But just remember, start with this format to begin with. Here is an up-close picture of the structure that I talked about. And what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to take you into showing you how to change this to a grisaille. First of all, this is what grisaille is. It's a method of painting executed in shades of a neutral grayish color, and it is often used as an underpainting to get the values correctly. Okay, this is where I took the basic structure of a head and added the details to put on the eyes, the mouth, the nose, just in drawing. And I used another technique that you may want to implement, which is a grid. And that's where you divide the paper into 16 squares and work on each square separately so that you get the proportions exactly right. One of the problems in working on a painting on a flat surface is sometimes you get it distorted. And that's why a lot of portrait painters paint on an easel with the painting sitting up. For my palette on this, I'm using white, titanium white, burnt sienna, raw umber to make it a little bit darker, and then I'm using Payne's gray. You could use just black, but I just really like Payne's gray. So that's my palette. And I have my drawing on here, and I'm going to work on it. And I work from my black and white photograph, and I can show you it here, that where I look for the lights to do things very light and look for the darks and to go in with the dark with that. And I'm going to get started. I first mix white with a little burnt umber for kind of the lighter areas, and that's in his forehead. And I want to be able to blend this, so I got to do this pretty rapidly because you want the paint to stay wet so you can blend it together. And I'm putting this all over his forehead. And then I will mix a little more white and add the little lighter parts that are right above his brow. It's a little bit lighter, and it's light on down through his nose. So I want to make that a little lighter. But it's still the burnt umber color. And I think I see a little more light up in the upper part of his forehead in here. And then I want to add a little raw umber into this. And not too much. This is like adding salt to the soup. You add a very, very little amount. And you can always add more. Like this is a little lighter probably than I want it right now. But I will want to blend it into the lighter colors that I have down here. So I will take my brush and a little more water and blend it. And then I'm going to add a little bit more burnt umber on the edge here because it is darker in this area. And especially on this side, and usually one side is darker than the other whenever you're looking at a photograph. And then his eyebrows, I'm going to use the burnt umber on his eyebrows, but they're pretty dark and I'll probably want to get them darker. He has pretty black hair. But I'm going to start this way, and always, like adding salt to soup, you don't want to put too much black in right at first. Black will take over very quickly, so you have to be kind of careful about that. Okay, and then I have a little more burnt umber along the side here and the side of his cheek and this side of his head here. It's pretty dark. And he's pretty dark under his eyes. So I'm going to add another little more umber under his eyes. And then I'll go back to the lighter sienna in this area. And at the top of his eyes. And maybe a little more burnt umber right at the, or raw umber above his eye area, because it's pretty dark right there. And blend it again. Blending is an important skill to learn in working with acrylics. And in order to blend, as I said, you really have to have the paint wet. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit lighter. It's very light in here. So I'm going to put lighter in this spot. And again, it's good to have a paper towel around to wipe off your brush and blend it again in this area. So he's pretty white there, right under his eyes, under his eyebrows. But it gets quite dark right in here. I think I want to add a little umber in here. Okay, but it does lighten up right in the center. So blend a little bit light in there and light in there. But then back to the very light under the brows. Ah! Put my brush straight into the raw umber. So I need to go over that. Okay. And then, you know, the whites of the eyes we know are white, and I'm going to put a little white in there, but when you get to the color part, you're going to want to blue them down a little bit because they need to look shaded. If you have them too light, they pop out too much. So, but I'm using the white now because I'm doing the Grisaille. And then I'm going to put really dark in his eye area. And a little line around that of his eyelashes. Okay, a little line around here. Okay, and then it's a little light under his eye, right in here, but not too light. I need to add a little bit more burnt sienna down there. And along the edge of the nose, it gets kind of medium dark, not real dark. And then it really lightens up on his cheek. So we're going to go very light here. What you're doing in this is really focusing on the values. And that's so important, and it's so hard to do once you start working with color because the color tends to take our attention, but you really need the values right underneath the color. Okay, and on this side of the nose also kind of gets lighter. And the cheek area again is very, very light. And I'm going to use the Payne's Gray for his nostrils, as they would be very dark. And around that, maybe a little burnt umber. But you want to have it light. On the side of the nose, side of the nostrils. It's a little dark over on this side. And then back to the cheek area. Okay, and just let's take a little break. I took a short break, but now I'm coming back and continuing my Grisaille of this painting of my grandson. And I want to say that the area that you have the most light on is the cheeks, what I'm painting right now. And because now I've let this dry, this paint dry, I've got to repaint the area around it to, again, be able to blend. So you always have to remember that when you're blending, the paint has to remain very wet. And if it gets dry, you have to add more water, more paint, and reblend some of the areas that you have dried out on you. So I'm doing that. Adding a little bit more burnt sienna around the side. And you know, when you're working with a burnt sienna, which is more of a brownish color, it's easy to go back in and add color into this because this is very close to the color of a person's skin. So you can just make tiny changes in that to bring it to a more natural looking color. And as I said before, you don't actually have to not have the Grisaille because sometimes painters just go with that. And it's, if you look online, you can see examples of Grisaille paintings going all the way back to the Renaissance. This actually started in Renaissance times using an underpainting of Grisaille, and sometimes they just stayed with that for the finished painting. Now I'm going to put a little bit of this line in the mouth. Has to be quite dark. And I think I mentioned to somebody in class that, you know, I don't really recommend having a smile with teeth showing. You can do it, but it's very difficult because the teeth tend to pop out and you have to really take them down, or they will just look like they're popping out of the painting. So that means adding some blue to it, bluing it. Blue is the color of shadow. Now my grandson has a mustache and a beard, just popular with young people right now. And I'm painting that in. And I'm using a Payne's Gray to do that, but I could go back in with black. Black, my only complaint about black is it is very harsh, and you have to go very light on it in order for it to not, again, take over the painting. Black will take over. And I think I'm going to add some burnt umber to this too, to make it a little bit more of a natural color. And I need to match his eyebrows to this color also. This is actually, did I say burnt umber? There is a burnt umber, but this is actually what they call raw umber, which is a little darker. I'm going to put a little raw umber into his eyebrows to darken them. And maybe on the sides, the edges of his eyes. The iris of the eye tends to be a little darker toward the edge. And then where the black comes in is in the very center. Now I'm going to put around his mouth area, it's very light. And that kind of brings out the contrast between the lips and the face. Because the lips are a little darker than the face, and when you get to color, they have a reddish tone to them. So I'm going to put this white up here. Now I'm going to finish off his cheeks with some burnt sienna, because to make something look round, it has to get darker at the edges. And so whether it looks that dark in the photograph or not, I've got to add some darkness to the edge to make it look like it goes back into space. And sometimes in your photographs you can have very good contrast and sometimes not. And so you have to kind of increase the amount of value in your painting to do that. And then his neck is going to have to be darker yet, darker than the side, because it goes back in space further. So you go dark in here. And darker at the edge again, because it goes, it makes it look rounded. So I can add a little more white to the front of the neck to lighten it a little bit. And then it goes off into the darker side tones. And also dark around the edge at the bottom where it meets his t-shirt. Now we're going to go put in hair. Well, I'll finish off the ear. And the ear is kind of light on the outside edge of it, but then of course it has a very dark, and I'm going to the raw umber in there. It's a little too wet. And then his hair, I'm going to use raw umber and then maybe add some black into it because he's got very dark hair. So, but I'm using the raw umber because, again, black is not really a very natural color. And the browns tend to be more natural to the color of a person's face. But I do want to darken it a little bit more, so I will be doing that. You can see his beard's actually right now much darker than his hair. You need to bring those to more of a similar color. Some men's beards are a totally different color than their hair on their head. In the case of my grandson now. So I'm going to add a little black in here. Maybe a little more brown to the mustache to bring those colors together. And to lighten the hair, you'll notice in your photographs a lot of times there'll be light highlights. And so I'm going to go in on that with white. Okay, little white highlights. And they're always on the edges, the highlights. And a little bit more on one side than the other. And I could touch this up a little bit more, but I think I'm going to let this dry right now and then come back in the next section and show you how to glaze over it to put more natural color to the face. Okay. When I was painting this Grisaille, it was at a slight angle. So I wanted to show you a straight on picture of what the painting looks like at this point. Now we're going to go on to adding more natural color. I could leave it at this point, that would be okay, and this is pretty much close to natural skin color, but I'm going to add a little bit more to it. Now to add natural color into this, we're going to change the palette. I was using burnt sienna, raw umber, and Payne's Gray to do the Grisaille. Now I am changing to using titanium white, some cadmium yellow. I'm using magenta because magenta is much more natural looking than a pyrrole red. And then I'm putting also some ultramarine blue. So I'm kind of mixing the warm and cool colors here. But you just need to know that natural skin color is a combination of red, yellow, and blue. So you'll have all three of those in there. And when you add red, yellow, and blue together, it gets to be a brownish. And you change that color brown by adding more of one or the other or the third of those three colors. So I'm putting magenta in for some red, and I'm going to show you the picture of my grandson. This is a photograph, and photograph isn't always accurate color, so you can vary that. But you can see he's a little more reddish than what I did with a Grisaille. So I'm adding more red to the mix. I'm making it very, very thin and just going over the top of the Grisaille to redden it a bit. And you have to kind of really smooth it out. And this is a glaze. And I'm not doing too much on the nose because it's very light. But I'm putting a little bit of pink to the cheeks. And there's a little blue in that. Also a little yellow, but very little yellow. So I'm just making it much more pinkish, as a pink skin would be a little pinker. And very light on this, but lots of water, lots and lots of water, and very little of the color in this. And when it gets around to the edge, I'm going to put more blue in it, because as I said, blue is a shadow color, and so I'm putting a little more blue in here. And around the edges of his face. Again, more blue. I'm leaving the whites of his above his eyes very white, but I am bluing down the white in his eye, around his iris. And I used a little bigger brush to do that. And then I want to put some more pink into his lips, definitely more pink in the lips. And I'm going to a very small brush for that. So he has pink, it's pretty pink lips. But don't go all the way to the edge. Make it more toward the center of the lips. I also could put a little pink on the bottom of his nose, because that reflects kind of from his lip area. I'm going to put a little more blue in the eye area. Because I don't want these to pop out so much. And I could add a little white to make a sparkle in his eye, because there's always reflection off of an eye and they would be to the side. And I could put a little more blue up in here, definitely. It's a little too much blue. I have to be very gentle on this. A little more blue in here. And maybe a little blue out on the side here. But I'm mixing the blue with the magenta. So actually it becomes kind of a purple. Which is a good color to have on skin too. A little bit of yellow in just to brown it down a bit. And a little bit more pink on his. I'm going to use a larger brush. When I get to a larger area, I use a larger brush. A little more pink to his neck area. And if it's too much, you can always wet down the brush and take some off. A little more of the purplish color here. So you can see I haven't gone too far away from the Grisaille, but just adding a little color to it makes all the difference. And brings it back to people seeing this as more of a normal color. I want to show you the painting sitting straight up because it was in an angle when I was painting it. So you can see how it looks in the end process. Now next week we're going to add flowers to this picture, and I'm going to use Hawaiian flowers to make it a little more masculine for him. And then we're going to put gold about it. But that's next week's lesson. So this is all for this week. Bye for now.